It starts quietly, maybe a joke at your expense, a subtle shift in tone, a lingering look, or a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. Most people brush it off, telling themselves it's not worth the energy to respond. But that's where things get tricky, because disrespect, when ignored, only grows louder and sharper over time. Eventually, it becomes public and undeniable. By the time you feel you have to react, it's often too late. Disrespect that goes unchecked is essentially permission given, and Machiavelli knew this better than anyone. In a world fixated on power, reputation, and control, respect isn't something you wait to earn, it's something you enforce. When someone disrespects you, what you do next shapes everything. It's not just about what that person thinks of you. It affects how everyone else watching learns to treat you moving forward. Disrespect rarely starts as a personal attack. At first, it's a test. And if you don't push back, you're not just marked as weak, you're labeled safe to be disrespected again. So when disrespect happens, act immediately, not later, not in theory, but in the moment. You go silent, but you're far from passive. Here's the first Machiavellian rule of handling disrespect. The person who reacts emotionally always loses status, but the one who withdraws strategically becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability breeds fear. Silence doesn't mean ignoring the insult. It means pulling back your energy. Don't laugh it off. Don't pretend it didn't affect you. And don't explain how it made you feel. Instead, make your absence felt in your gaze, in your tone, in how you refuse to give them the energy they crave. That it's a pause, a blank space, in the rhythm they're trying to control. A black hole in the conversation where their attempt to dominate falls flat. Disrespect feeds on reactions like laughter, defensiveness, or letting things slide. When met with cold stillness, it exposes itself as a weak, desperate grab for power. Machiavelli didn't strike first. He observed and let his enemies reveal themselves fully before responding. And when he did respond, it wasn't with anger or apology, it was precision. That's your next move. Mirror the violation, not by insulting or retaliating, but by questioning. When someone crosses you, they expect you to get emotional. They want to trigger your insecurity. What they don't expect is to be called out. Hold their eye. Tilt your head slightly. Say calmly, "Did you mean it like that? Or are you sure you want to say that again? Or that sounded pretty personal. Do you want to clarify before I respond?" Each of those lines is a targeted cut. You're not denying the disrespect, you're inviting them to double down, to make their intentions clear for everyone to see. Most won't, because most disrespectful people aren't bold. They're opportunistic. They push boundaries looking for who will push back. When you respond with silent tension and unshakable clarity, doubt enters their mind, and doubt is way more powerful than anger or revenge. The person who causes others to hesitate, to second-guess themselves, doesn't demand respect, it radiates naturally from them. But here's where it gets more complicated. Handling one moment well is great, but what many miss is the importance of consistency. If someone disrespects you once and you set the boundary, that's step one. But if they sense you're softening later, they'll test again. So the third step, reframe the relationship immediately. Don't go back to business as usual. Don't pretend nothing happened. Redraw the lines through how you speak, how you show up, and how unavailable you become. Machiavelli knew public consequences that were both justified and timed perfectly. Not only stop threats, they send a clear message to the whole room. If the disrespect happened in front of others, let your new posture speak louder than any comeback. Withdraw your warmth, sharpen your words, reject their invitations. No need to announce it, just let them feel it. This is the difference between being respected and being overlooked. It's not about loud dominance, but presence rooted in principle. You show everyone clearly, I am not accessible for that, and I don't owe you an explanation to make you comfortable. Now, the social current flows differently. People watch, they become cautious. Your name carries weight. Respect doesn't come from being the loudest. It belongs to the ones who respond right away, not with noise, but with controlled silence, piercing clarity, and an absolute refusal to sacrifice self-respect for comfort. That's how you stop disrespect before it even starts, not with anger or ego, but with discipline, distance, and undeniable control. Disrespect is never a small issue. It's a signaler test to see how far someone can push before you push back. When you allow even one insult or subtle dismissal, you teach everyone around you exactly what your silence is worth. And Machiavelli would warn you this: Once someone sees you as easy to disrespect, taking back control costs twice as much. After the first encounter, when you've gone still, called out the moment with calm precision, and created distance, what happens next is just as important, because people will test your boundaries again, only this time, in subtler and more corrosive ways. They might joke around with a smile. They might exclude you from decisions claiming it was a mistake. They might make a passive comment just to watch your reaction. That's when you make your second move, reinforce your frame with consequences that far outweigh the offense. Machiavelli's philosophy wasn't about fairness, it was about effectiveness. If the punishment matches the offense, it's forgettable. But if it's greater, unforgettable, you're not reacting emotionally anymore. You're sending a clear message: you don't get to disrespect me twice. When they cross the line again, you get colder, not louder. If it happened publicly, your response is public to strategic, surgical rejection, not insults. They make a comment, you pause, lock eyes, and address the group. They ask a question, you respond with a single word, and then turn your attention elsewhere. They try to reclaim your warmth. You close the door, socially polite, formal, distant. It's not aggression, it's removal. You're not trying to beat them down. You're demonstrating something more powerful: they've lost access to you. What hits people hardest isn't insult, it's being ignored by someone who once acknowledged them. Most people fail here. They want to be liked. They want to smooth things over. They cling to the hope that being the bigger person will earn admiration. But Machiavelli would laugh at that, because respect isn't earned through forgiveness. It's earned with silence and calculated consequences. And here is where your true power begins. People are always watching. They saw when you were disrespected. They saw how you responded. Now, they're watching for whether you'll fall back or stand firm. This is your chance to build your image. Because image, Machiavelli taught, is more powerful than truth. Your post-conflict image becomes either your armor or your exposed weakness. You want your silence to speak loudly. I don't tolerate that, or I won't engage with disrespect, or you get one chance with me no more. When your name carries those unspoken warnings, everything changes. People speak more carefully. The jokes in your direction stop. They introduce you as no-nonsense, sharp, or intense. That is your new power. You didn't demand it, but you built it, one precise response at a time. But not everyone can be stopped with public shame or calculated rejection. Some people don't care about approval. They want your reaction. They thrive on disruption and testing boundaries just for the thrill. When they meet you, they either escalate or retreat. If they escalate, that's your signal for the third-level response. Leverage their disrespect against them, but on your terms. Don't escalate emotionally. Escalate socially if they have any influence, reputation, or role. Frame them carefully with precision. Subtly or openly use their behavior against them. You might say, "Interesting joke. Do you tell that one at work too?" Or, "If you talk to your friends like that, I'd hate to hear what you say to strangers." Or, "I'm surprised you said that out loud." You're not arguing. You're putting a spotlight on their words, making them wear their own disrespect where everyone can see. Their confidence shrinks not because you overpowered them, but because you made the whole room remember who they really are: small, insecure, and noisy. That's the power of Machiavellian retaliation. It's always measured, targeted, and delivered with cold calm that leaves your opponent clueless about how badly they were just checkmated. The best part, you stay composed, poised. You let the disrespect hang in the air, and then collapse it into something that now belongs to them. This is how you build lasting power, not just by refusing to react, but by turning every disrespectful act into their own exposure. And when you do this, you never chase respect again, because now everyone knows. You don't argue, you don't explain, you don't tolerate, you end it quietly, surgically, and permanently. Disrespect feeds on a sense of safety, not your safety, but theirs. People insult you because they believe you won't respond. They mock because they think there won't be consequences. They push because they're confident you've never pushed back before. But Machiavelli understood something crucial. Power isn't about striking all the time. It's about creating the sense that you could respond at any moment in a way they didn't expect and won't be able to handle. This is next-level power. You become a threat without ever threatening anyone. You don't need to say a single word. You just need to be unpredictable. From now on, when someone disrespects you after you've made your boundary clear, your job isn't to win their approval. It's to make them uncertain about you. They start asking themselves, did I go too far? Why is he so quiet now? What's she thinking? Why didn't they react like before? That uncertainty becomes your shield. The person people are unsure about is the person they avoid. Machiavelli warned against being too predictable or transparent. A leader who's easy to read is easy to control. But if you're silent, unreadable, controlled, if you respond just once, cold and precise, and then retreat behind calm silence, you become an anomaly in the room. And anomalies shift the power dynamics. People defer to the anomaly not out of fear, but instinctively, because the human mind naturally protects itself from what it doesn't understand. Lean into that. Speak less than others. Observe more than you talk. When you do speak, make every word count. Here's a psychological twist most people miss. Respect doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being felt. When you enter a room and the energy shifts, people's voices drop. Their posture changes. Their tone softens. That's not popularity. That's presence. And presence is built on contradiction. You don't always respond. But when you do, your words cut deep. You don't dominate. But you don't tolerate being crossed. You don't ask to be respected. But you take away access the second it's violated. That's how your energy becomes a silent warning, a consequence without words, wrapped in calm control. But the final transformation is the hardest. You stop treating disrespect like it's personal. You start seeing it as information. This is where your mind separates from the average person while they feel hurt. You think, there's the weak spot in them. You see past their words to their need, the insecurity, jealousy, fear, or desperation behind the disrespect. And that's the ultimate power. When someone disrespects you, it reveals more about them than you, so you log it. You remember. Then you move forward, not by forgiving, but by calculating. Do they get access to your world? Do they need public isolation or quiet disappearance? Will you use their disrespect to send a message to others, or let them fade away on their own? You're no longer playing emotional chess. You're orchestrating position. And as Machiavelli taught, the best position is one where everyone fears crossing your boundary, even when you're not around. That's when you've truly won. Not when people praise you, but when your absence carries the same weight as your presence. Because those who never get disrespected aren't always the loudest. They're the ones who've made disrespect too costly, not with anger or revenge, but with disciplined silence, disproportionate consequence, and unwavering self-enforcement. You don't play by their social game. You play the power game, and when you do, everything changes. People hesitate before crossing you. Their jokes get softer. Their words slow down. Their energy shifts because now they know you're not here to fit in. You're here to be respected, and if they can't do that, you leave them in a silence they'll never recover from. There's a moment in every power dynamic that's subtle but undeniable, the moment the room shifts. Because of you, that happens after the silence, after the boundary is set, after you've made it crystal clear without saying a word that you're not someone to be crossed. The result? People don't just stop disrespecting you, stop thinking they could. That's the final layer Machiavelli insists on. You don't just respond to disrespect, you change what you represent in their minds. Power isn't about how you react, it's about what people assume you do. Even when you say nothing, you become someone whose limits are unknown, someone whose silence doesn't signal weakness, but preparation. Whose calm isn't friendliness, but control. The biggest mistake most people make is thinking that enforcing a boundary once is the end of the story. It's the test of your reputation, not just with the person who crossed you, but with everyone who saw it, whether directly or indirectly. When someone crosses you in public, the whole room watches to see if your value depends on the audience, or if you self-regulate. If you hold your ground under pressure without losing it, apologizing, or begging for approval, people feel it. They sense certainty, and certainty is rare in a world addicted to seeking approval. That doesn't mean being cold or hostile. Means your warmth becomes your choice, not your default. You smile when you want to. You speak when it matters. You give access only to those who prove they don't take it for granted. That's how you become untouchable, not with physical power, but by owning your energy. Your energy is built by subtraction. Subtract the neediness. Subtract the reactivity. Subtract over-explaining and justifying your presence. Subtract tolerating even a hint of disrespect, no matter how small or disguised, and suddenly, you attract a different kind of response. The room slows when you enter. People don't cut you off mid-sentence. They repeat your words later. Carefully, you're no longer navigating social terrain. You are the terrain. And here's Machiavelli's most brutal truth. Men must be either respected or eliminated. In modern terms, that means either they get your value or they lose access to it. It's not about revenge, it's about consequence. Without drama. People who disrespect you just once and never again aren't the problem, they're the lesson. But the ones who disrespect you repeatedly, manipulatively, that's when you vanish from their world. Or better yet, you rise in power while they fade into irrelevance, because in silence, you expose them, and in distance, you remind them, you were never really accessible, you were simply being tolerated. Once you've made that shift, everything changes. You no longer try to be liked. You no longer respond to indirect attacks. You don't feel the need to prove you're the bigger person. You realize what Machiavelli knew centuries ago. You never have to defend what you won't allow to be touched. They can't disrespect you if they can't reach you. They can't undermine you if you never stood on their approval. They can't provoke you if your silence makes them question their own status. That is the highest form of psychological dominance. Not cruelty, not pride, but control. Control over what you react to. Control over what energy you give back. Control over who even gets the chance to see your reaction. That's how kings moved in Machiavelli's world, and that's how you move in yours. Not with rage or noise, but with a presence so exacting that just one crossing becomes unforgettable. After that moment, you don't earn respect. You become the standard by which all others are measured. There's one final move, something that defines your legacy that most people don't master. It happens when someone realizes they made a mistake by disrespecting you. What do you do then? You don't punish them. You don't forgive them. You do something far more powerful. Mercy, when given without warmth, sends the clearest and coldest message of all. It says, you are no longer a threat to me. That's how you finish the game, after you've set the boundary, withdrawn your presence, held your frame with stillness, and let the silence echo. They might come back. They might apologize. They might overcompensate. They might laugh nervously and try to pretend everything's normal. But here is your moment of ultimate control. You don't respond with anger. You don't give a smile. You don't comfort them. You simply remain unchanged. No bitterness. No resentment. No explanation for why you're different now. You let them live in the new reality you created, where your gaze no longer seeks their presence, where your energy doesn't adjust to accommodate them, where they are no longer part of your world, but just a ghost drifting through it. This isn't pettiness. It's power by absence. Nothing disturbs someone who tried to shake your frame more than realizing you never relied on them in the first place. You weren't seeking their approval. You weren't chasing belonging. You weren't playing by their rules. That's the ultimate cut. When they see that their disrespect failed to wound you, it elevates you. It makes you sharper, more respected, more distant, and ultimately untouchable. This is the role Machiavelli wants you to play, not the vengeful prince punishing every slight, but the silent architect of consequence. Someone who lets others betray themselves in public while staying calm, calculated, and just out of reach. You never demand respect because everyone already knows you deserve it. People only make that mistake once, and after that, your name starts circulating quietly, not because of drama but because of your restraint. They say things like, he doesn't say much, but when he does, I've never seen her lose her cool. You don't want to be on their bad side. Be careful with them. They don't come around twice. That's the reputation you build, a foundation so solid that people self-correct around you. They check their tone. They watch their words. They wonder if you're watching, not out of fear, but because your energy carries weight. But from that moment on, you don't have to fight for respect. You've won it. You've mastered selective presence. You show up when you want. You speak when it matters. And when you leave, whether a conversation, a group, or a relationship, they feel it, because the person who can't be disrespected isn't the loudest. They're the one whose attention can't be taken for granted. So let people talk. Let them guess. Let them wonder what you'll do next, because they already know. If they cross the line, you won't explain, you won't argue, you won't chase. You'll just disappear. And that silence, it will echo louder than any comeback ever could.